at long last. The day had come, a day I had long anticipated. It was time to escape the constant sight of your face and the freeloaders who had contributed nothing while taking so much. They should have been grateful for the generosity they had received over the years. With determination, I announced, "I won't be coming back. Thank you for everything up to this point." I quickly gathered my essentials and bid farewell to the house that had been my home for so long. As I stepped outside, I caught a glimpse of satisfaction on my mother-in-law's face, unaware of the poignant secret I carried with me. I am Megan, 35 years old, working remotely from home. I've been married to Charles for 6 years. Our marriage faced challenges in its 5th year when Charles's once healthy father fell seriously ill, requiring constant care. Initially reluctant to move in with my in-laws, I agreed out of necessity. Charles was their only family member capable of providing support. Though I considered quitting my job to care for his father full-time, my company allowed me to continue working remotely, recognizing my strong performance. Living with my in-laws brought immediate challenges, thrusting me into the classic tensions between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. "Megan, hurry up and take care of the cooking and cleaning. How long will you be lazy and avoid your responsibilities?" my mother-in-law would chide. "I'm working right now." "What do you mean? I'm always just clicking away at the computer," I would snap back. While juggling household chores and caring for my ailing father-in-law, I focused on leveraging my skills and, after 4 months of hard work, managed to return to my previous salary. When my earnings finally matched their peak, I felt a surge of joy. Yet I was driven by a harsh financial reality. Charles's income alone wasn't enough to support us. Despite my hopes for a more peaceful future, the struggle continued, and I found myself considering setting aside some savings. As time passed, my financial issues seemed to multiply. It felt as if the money in my wallet was disappearing. Intrigued by this troubling trend, I scrutinized our expenses, only to discover that Charles had developed a penchant for unnecessary luxuries. Additionally, my mother-in-law had a flair for the extravagant, often indulging in lavish hobbies and social outings. Charles, eager to please, frequently used our credit cards not only for work-related lunches but also for extravagant parties with friends. Meanwhile, the responsibility of household chores and caring for my father-in-law fell solely on my shoulders. I was pouring nearly all my income into our living expenses, making the idea of saving money seem like a distant dream. Concerned about our dwindling finances, I decided it was time to address the issue. "Charles, it seems we've been spending excessively," I began cautiously. "If this continues, we could deplete our savings entirely. Can we please consider cutting back on our expenses?" Their response was anything but understanding. Charles retorted, "I don't want to seem stingy in front of my colleagues and subordinates. Can't you understand that? I get that maintaining good relationships with your coworkers is important, but you don't have to cover their expenses every time." I reasoned, "What about those nights out at bars? Surely that has nothing to do with work." They dismissed my concerns outright, leaving me frustrated and anxious about our financial future. As I struggled to balance household needs with ongoing financial irresponsibility, it became increasingly clear that I had to find a way to rein in the spending or risk serious financial turmoil. I confronted Charles. "It feels like you just want to have fun, doesn't it? You come home drunk and start talking about your outings, even when no one asks. It seems like you enjoy those times more than being with me." I could no longer hide my frustration. My mother-in-law, however, merely laughed off my concerns and sided with Charles. "I'm glad Mom understands, and she's right," Charles agreed, filled with confidence. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law justified her spending. "If I didn't go to my classes, I'd be stuck at home all day. I take these classes with my friends to enjoy my time." I struggled to reconcile their harsh words, which echoed endlessly in my mind. They labeled me a terrible daughter-in-law, criticizing me for not earning an income, despite my dedication to managing the household and caring for my father-in-law. In their eyes, this made me unworthy of voicing any complaints, an idea that baffled me. Despite their judgment, I knew the truth. I was diligently working from home, contributing a steady income while balancing housework and caregiving. Their skepticism and condescending attitudes toward my remote work were disheartening. To add insult to injury, my mother-in-law had spun a narrative that painted her as the sole caregiver for my father-in-law, casting me as a lazy homemaker. This twisted perception of my role left me feeling speechless and pained by the injustice. Throughout the countless times I contemplated leaving this difficult situation, my deep concern for my father-in-law kept me grounded. From the early days of my marriage, he had treated me with genuine kindness, a stark contrast to the treatment I received from Charles and my mother-in-law. His sincere expressions of gratitude, often calling me a wonderful daughter-in-law, deeply touched my heart. Whenever he needed care, he would apologize for the inconvenience, always expressing appreciation for my dedication. These moments brought me solace and a strong sense of purpose. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving him at the mercy of Charles and my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had an acute awareness of our family dynamics and truly recognized my contributions, not only in caregiving but also in maintaining the household's financial stability. His words of appreciation weren't just comforting, they fortified me, providing the strength to endure an environment that often felt hostile. While I feared what might happen to our household without my stabilizing presence, my greater concern was for the well-being of my beloved father-in-law. Thus, I resolved to remain by his side, offering dedicated care until the end. A year later, his funeral became an emotional battleground for me. In the midst of my profound grief, my tears were met with cold disapproval, compounding the weight of my loss. This reaction highlighted the complexity of my situation, yet it also reaffirmed the importance of my role during his final days. "Why are you crying so much, Megan? He's gone now. Isn't it natural to mourn like this?" I was questioned. My response seemed to irk my mother-in-law even more. She accused me of implying that she had never cared for him. However, the truth was quite different. She had largely been absent in his caregiving. Her focus on hobbies and frequent social outings meant the bulk of the responsibilities fell squarely on my shoulders. Despite my efforts, she portrayed herself as the pitiful mother-in-law to those outside our immediate family, casting me as the harsh and cruel daughter-in-law to our relatives. This narrative suggested I was being unfairly hard on her. Even as I grieved, I found myself criticized by those who had little understanding of the true dynamics within our household. Out of frustration, I began to distance myself from my relatives, a shift that Charles quickly noticed. He confronted me, saying, "You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone." I was taken aback by this accusation. "That doesn't make any sense," I replied. "I was simply crying over the loss of my father-in-law." "But your mom found it strange how much you cried." "I never said she didn't care for him at all. I was just expressing my sorrow for someone I deeply loved." As our argument escalated, Charles accused me of insulting his mother and suggested that if my grief upset me so much, I should reconsider my actions. I defended myself, insisting that my tears were solely for my father-in-law, whom I cherished, not a critique of anyone else. After his passing, the tension between Charles and me intensified, culminating in a fierce argument that required intervention from our relatives to diffuse. In the aftermath, I chose to remain silent towards Charles as the funeral proceedings continued. Shortly thereafter, a lawyer arrived to discuss the will and the distribution of the estate. "I'd like to review the contents of your late father's will," the lawyer began. "First, to his wife and daughter-in-law Megan, he has left half of his cash assets to each of you. To his son Charles, he has left the family land and home." My mother-in-law immediately interjected, "If Charles gets the land and the house, why is Megan receiving an inheritance? She isn't related by blood." The lawyer replied, "Your husband was deeply grateful for the dedicated care Megan provided. He wanted to express his appreciation by including her in the inheritance. This decision is final and cannot be changed." Unable to accept this, my mother-in-law accused me. "I can't believe it. You were only caring for him to get the inheritance, weren't you?" I had a good relationship with my father-in-law since marrying into this family. I defended myself. "I cared for him out of love and respect, grateful for how he treated me." Despite her relentless accusations, suggesting that my care was a form of psychological manipulation, my mother-in-law eventually ran out of steam. The lawyer reaffirmed, "That was your father's decision." This moment vindicated my genuine affection and care for my father-in-law, confirming that his gratitude toward me was both real and legally recognized, despite the bitter suspicions from others. As the lawyer confirmed the terms of the will, expressing gratitude for my dedicated care, I noticed my mother-in-law's discontented expression shift into a smile. "Yes, that's great, I understand," she exclaimed with a nod. Confused, Charles asked her, "What do you mean?" It seemed strange for her to change her stance so suddenly. With a sense of satisfaction, she explained, "Now that Dad's gone, we don't need to rely on Megan anymore. Her inheritance is just like severance pay. We don't need her in this house." She had completely misunderstood my father-in-law's intentions, viewing the will as an opportunity to sever ties with me rather than a recognition of my contributions. Unbeknownst to her, this was precisely what my father-in-law had planned before his passing. He had confided in me his wish for me to be free from the constraints of living under the same roof as my in-laws. The will was designed not only as a gesture of gratitude but also as a clever ruse to facilitate my departure in a way that seemed natural to others, including deceiving Charles and my mother-in-law about his true intentions. My mother-in-law saw this as a chance to push me out of the family, seizing the moment while hiding my actual desire to leave. I feigned shock and sadness. "Father-in-law, why would you treat me like this?" I lamented, giving the impression that I was merely a caretaker in his eyes. Turning to Charles with tears in my eyes, I pleaded, "You can't understand me anymore, can you? Why don't you just divorce me?" After a moment's contemplation, swayed by the emotion I displayed and perhaps his mother's influence. Charles replied, "You know what? Let's get a divorce." This dramatic turn of events played right into the hidden plan my father-in-law and I had crafted, setting me on a path to regain my independence and start anew, away from the constraints and conflicts of my in-laws' home. After the reading of the will, Charles inherited the family home and land, while his mother received a portion of the cash. With these assets secured, Charles casually remarked, "There's no need to worry about living arrangements anymore, so it's okay if Megan leaves." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, though I already knew what he intended. Charles replied, indifferent, "I hate to ask, but could you leave our house and agree to the divorce?" Realizing I had no place in their plans, I accepted the inevitable. "Understood. I guess there's no place for me here anymore." With a controlled calmness, I opened a drawer, retrieved a document, and handed it to him. It was a notice of filing for divorce, prepared soon after our last major argument. Charles quickly signed the document, relief evident on his face. "Finally, I don't have to deal with you anymore. A non-working freeloader should just get out. You should be grateful we put up with you." "Is that so? Okay, I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for everything up to now," I replied, masking my inner turmoil with a facade of gratitude. As I exited, my mother-in-law's face lit up with glee, blissfully unaware of what the future might hold for their household without me. Without hesitation, I submitted the divorce notice to City Hall the moment I stepped out of their home. When I arrived at the apartment I had secured in advance, I entered the spacious, empty room and reveled in the echo of my own voice. Finally, I can be by myself. This is great. Overwhelmed with joy, I embraced my newfound freedom, liberated from a marriage that had become increasingly stifling. Here, in this fresh space, I could start anew, embrace solitude, and rebuild my life on my terms. I owed a deep gratitude to my late father-in-law for devising a clever plan that enabled my escape from the oppressive environment of my in-laws' home. Settling into this newfound independence, I created a comfortable life on my own, cherishing the freedom to continue my remote work. This arrangement not only improved my time management skills but also boosted my productivity, leading to an increase in my income. I enjoyed a peaceful existence, free from external meddling, until an unexpected call from my ex-husband, Charles, shattered my tranquility. It had been a while since we last spoke, and I was taken aback. "Why are you calling me, Charles? Weren't you the one who wanted me out of your life?" I asked. "Megan, please help us. We're in a bind," Charles pleaded, his voice strained. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. "What kind of joke is this? My salary hasn't changed, yet suddenly you're out of money? How can you not manage?" With a mix of amusement and finality, I prepared to deliver a reality check. "That's because you no longer have my income to supplement yours. You squandered your entire salary on luxuries. Maybe it's time you and your mother learned some financial responsibility." Confused, Charles asked, "What do you mean?" "You still don't get it," I replied, emphasizing just how much they had relied on me without ever acknowledging it. Now they were facing the consequences of their financial irresponsibility, a bitter lesson on the importance of prudence and planning. I clarified the situation for Charles. "While you were indulging in luxuries, my salary of about $6,500 a month was covering our living expenses. Now I'm earning even more, and I'm doing it all without anyone holding me back." Frustrated and perhaps realizing his predicament, Charles made a desperate plea. "Megan, can't we start over? It was a mistake to let you go. I want to make things right." I scoffed at his sudden change of heart. "It's clear you're just after my income. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see your face again. What happened to the inheritance your mother received? She should be living comfortably with that." Charles confessed, "It's about to run out. We spent it on a shopping spree, went on overseas trips, and lost half of it in the casino." Unmoved, I shot back, "A foolish mother breeds a foolish son. I have nothing more to say to you. I'm a stranger now, and I can't help you, nor do I want to." Desperate, Charles implored, "Don't be so heartless. Help me. This has nothing to do with me. There's nothing more to discuss. I'm hanging up. Don't call me again," I stated firmly before ending the call and promptly canceling the mobile phone contract I had been using. A year later, while passing by my former mother-in-law's house, I noticed it had been transformed into an empty lot, likely sold off due to their financial struggles. Unfazed, I continued with my life, enjoying my newfound free time attending a wine class I had long wanted to try. There, I met a man 3 years my senior who was serious about our relationship. After a year and a half of dating, we got married. He is an executive at a well-known company, humble despite his high salary, with a warm and wonderful character. We respect each other's careers, leading to a fulfilling married life. Reflecting on these changes, I can't help but feel that, in a way, this was a form of retribution, a gift from my father-in-law, allowing me to find true happiness and respect in a relationship.